Hello there, you are listening to The Screen Queen, where you'll be finding your favorite movie or your favorite television show and learning something new. You'll just have to listen to find out. Here is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there and welcome back to the second episode of the Halloween series on The Screen Queen. So, this is going to be monumental. I have been waiting to cover a Jordan Peele film probably since the beginning of the show, because let me tell you something about your main media queen. I don't miss any one of Jordan Peele's films in theaters, and this film is the reason why. However, his films are probably the only ones that I've had a hard time going back to watch. So I have to admit, I have a hard time going back to watch Get Out. It is amongst my collection because it's one of the first real horror films I felt I got to witness in history. Every time I look at the DVD and I think about watching it, I know what I'm expecting, I know what I'm in for, but it's like the idea of the experience again is something that is hard to get back into. It's an unforgettable film, but there are some unforgettable films that you want to experience again. This is one of those that tests you on your comfort if you want to experience it again. The thing about horror is that screen acts as a barrier, and it protects you from what's beyond, what's in the darkness, what's out there, what you were warned about in the campfire stories, or the echoes of some very terrible nightmares that have existed in everyday life. Jordan Peele basically said, hold my beer, I'm going to make every single thing happen. Get Out is one of those films that dares you to be comfortable enough to sit and endure uncomfortable material that no matter where you turn, it's always going to be unsettling. But it's the idea of, okay, how is he going to get out of this unsettling thing? It wants to be like the name say, is he going to get out? I gotta see this title come full circle. But before I go any further, I do feel like I need to give an advisory warning that this episode is going to contain themes about racial issues. And also keep in mind that I don't claim myself to be the voice of issues. I'm just a voice that just contributes to the commentary, but I'll be incredibly mindful of the way that I speak. All right, so here we go. Without further ado, let's get into Get Out. So I want to begin this episode the way that Get Out began for me, at the movie theater. I went to go see Get Out in 2017 with my former best friend. I had been looking forward to it all week. We amped up this whole event, dressed up for it, and while we were waiting and chit-chatting, my ex-bestie gets her phone out and types something and then discreetly passes it to me. And it says, "We're the only white people in the theater." And I don't pay any mind to it because I'm waiting to watch the movie. And I look around and I'm just like, oh yeah, that's a very accurate ratio. But I am never going to get it out of my mind hearing the one girl at the bottom of the stairs going, Jordan Peele is so hot. And I was like, we have very different reasons to be here in this movie. It was so funny to have to witness it. Already got me started in a good time before the crazy times happen. So I'm very certain that there isn't no one that hasn't heard of this film. You don't have to be a film buff to know that this is Jordan Peele's directorial debut and that it was felt by everyone. Everyone that I've talked to has heard about this film, and it's a wonderful thing to have to see in the progression we've had with film and how Jordan Peele just basically got himself inducted into this and deserves all the accolades. And since this is the Screen Queen, I want to go ahead and give Mr. Peele his story and give my own spin on it. So Get Out follows a guy named Chris Washington who is doing really good in his life. He's got things steady with school. He's got a wonderful girlfriend, and the girlfriend says, "Hey, you want to come meet my parents?" And he's like, "Sure. What could possibly go wrong?" But Chris can't help but notice how off and odd things look. He looks around and he notices that all the groundskeepers are black, all the maids are black, and he's asked some very specific questions that make him feel very uncomfortable to wonder what is going on here. But then he notices one of the white people has a black boyfriend, and so for his own curiosity, he takes a picture of it to save for later, and then he gets the answer himself when the man comes out of what appears to be a trance and screams, "Get out, get out," making him wonder, what has he gotten into? What is going on here? But unfortunately, he may or may not be aware how trapped he actually is. So before I go into any trivia detail, there's one thing I just have to say. If you ever, and I mean ever, get the chance to watch Get Out on the big screen, it changes the way you see everything. It is more an immersive experience. It's like when you get to go see Oppenheimer or Blazing Saddles on screen. You get to see a lot more of the detail and it feels more submersive. And with this being a film that really does play on submersive details in every step of the way, it fits more to the experience. So if the title alone wasn't trying to suggest what's exactly going to happen here, the music also fulfills more of the commentary. Or I should say more of a warning, more of a tone. There is a composer named Michael Abels who did the main theme, and I apologize in advance because I might botch this. Silkaza kwa Wahenga. And it's a song sung in Swahili. And according to Abels, it's the voices in the song that represent the souls of black slaves and lynching victims trying to warn Chris to get away. The translation of the lyrics is, "Brother, run, listen to the elders, listen to the truth, run away, save yourself." So he's got a lot of warning going on before Lakeith Stanfield comes in and says even more. But then there's the other song chosen for the film. Redbone by Childish Gambino appears in this with the request by Jordan Peele because of the lyrics. I mean, it's Childish Gambino. Come on, that's about as perfect as you're going to get to have something come into the tone of this movie. Especially having a lot of choice things. That's the one thing I love about Jordan Peele is that he gives you these details knowing that every single part of them is important. But now that just makes me want to do like the Get Out version now of Redbone. Can we get that? Can that be on there? Can that be before Childish Gambino retires? Like, I already have a perfect lyric. A crazy white lady tried to hypnotize. I'm good. Let's move on. So here's the big question that I had. Where did Get Out come from? And I took a little bit of a trip through the IMDb trivia and I found several key elements that became the ingredients to make Get Out. One of the pieces that he used heavily was a TV show called Psychoville. It's a British television show that starred leading man Daniel Kaluuya. Now we know where he got Chris Washington from. It's kind of poetic, isn't it? But it wasn't just Psychoville. Psychoville was kind of like the mold, but it's got to have a little bit more of an echo. And that is where Halloween comes in. The opening in Get Out is inspired by the opening to Halloween. And looking at it, yeah, I can see that. It does feel very Michael Myers-esque. I wouldn't say it's a cut, copy, paste, but the same eeriness we got in Halloween and the way John Carpenter did, Jordan Peele took some good cues from that to make the same formula to get people invested and interested, to know you're going to be looking at something that is going to be impossible to look away from. But I also found this out. The opening scene is also inspired by North by Northwest from Alfred Hitchcock. And it's like, wow, that's like 2 cinematic blueprints in one damn scene. That's pretty impressive. But the biggest piece of them all? might just be Eddie Murphy. When Eddie Murphy joked in his special called Delirious, he went on a tangent about how dumb people can be in horror films, like Poltergeist and the Amityville Horror. Like, why would you want to stay in the house? Like, spooky shit is happening, fucking leave. And that is something we often scream at horror films. I would know. I do that on a regular basis, where I'm like, are you allergic to logic, main characters? Can you get out? I see any threat, I am gone. There was like an outline of where I once was. It's just as air, and I fucking Looney Tuned my way out. Jordan Peele basically gave us the greatest echo and the greatest complaint and the greatest way to sum up hard issues, everything. It's like Get Out literally became everything you look for in a film without having to feel overdosed. And to think all of that is because of the key ingredients of Psychoville, Halloween, and Eddie Murphy. But here's the other big question. Who would play the role of Chris Washington if it wasn't going to be Daniel Kaluuya? I got an article from my best pal Ace, who is also a huge fan of this film, and said that Scott Mescudi, aka Kid Cudi. So, he had auditioned for Chris Washington, but unfortunately just didn't pan out. Obviously, Chris had to be played by Daniel Kaluuya, because we ended up getting the performance of Daniel Kaluuya. And honestly, I love both those actors, but Dan's my main man. I loved what he did. And ironically, it's because of this is why I adamantly look for him in films. When I see his name, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be seeing greatness. I have no doubt. This man made my soul shiver in on itself. That is a once-in-a-lifetime performance you don't get. However, I do like Kid Cudi. I loved him in the movie X. I could have seen him in this. In a perfect other world, sure, maybe that could go. So I'm going to make the shift to talking about the hero, and we're going to talk about the villains of this film. I actually had to go back and read more about these villains and like what exactly are they labeled as. And the one thing that's been labeled is that they're liberals. And I'm pretty sure that is going to be seen by many people. But for someone like me that doesn't really understand politics to a certain extent to be able to identify someone's tongue and tone by a political party, that just wouldn't fly by me. But for the sake of this story, I do see how that can work. I mean, this family is so liberal, you can practically smell it on the lawn. That does add to the eeriness, that it's a group of people that are just going to see things one way. That is a very uncomfortable thing. Even Daniel Kaluuya went on to say that he's been in situations like Chris Washington's. Thank God he never got hypnotized by a fucking teacup, but he's been in situations that do feel very different, that there is a massive shift. Someone is embedded into another part of society, and there may not be a way to get them to understand a certain part of a conversation without trying to make it like a join us feeling. And that is definitely a very real nightmare you get in America or anywhere else. A while ago, when CinemaSins covered Get Out on their channel, one of the things they mentioned as a praise for the film is the character Rose, and how there would be a longing to see a prequel on how did Rose get that insane. The way she smiles as being strangled, like that's a flavor of evil. You don't get that often. I mean, clearly the whole family is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for wanting to kidnap Black people in the hugest plot twist that it's not what we thought it was. But still, the act of kidnapping someone else and invading their mind, that is horrifying on every degree. I kid you not, in the theater, when Chris finds the pictures of all the people Rose lured, and then it got to the Black woman, the whole theater was like, no! She was willing to do whatever it took to get black people for her family. Justifying it no matter how it had to happen. When you go backwards and see her relationship with Chris, and then up until it's revealed that she's in on everything, it really turns your stomach in a way that no amount of Tums can ever settle it. But that is to the testament and greatness that is the talent of Allison Williams. Because let me tell you something about Allison Williams. That woman has too much fucking talent. This was the first movie I ever saw her in. This was my introduction to Allison Williams. And I saw in her filmography that she was known for a show called Girls, which is a show that once upon a time I used to idolize. And she famously played a character named Marnie Michaels there for 6 years. And Marnie is one of the most selfish characters on that show. And then to jump right into Get Out, like, it's such a huge jump, a huge leap. And I'm really glad that I saw her in this first, because now I know how good she is. She can play one of the most disgusting characters in Girls and then play one of the most disturbing characters in Get Out. Not many people have that kind of leap into different genres. It's even getting to a point that people like detest her characters to the point that they feel real. And it's pretty much a good testament as an actor that you can make someone fictional feel real. Like, I would never want to be friends with Marnie, and I hope to God I never encounter Rose. So I have one more point to say before I make my final story. There was an original ending to Get Out that I'm so glad didn't happen. But at the same time, I can't deny that the original ending does play an unfortunate real-life note to racial profiling. It had Chris Washington escaping the hell that was the Armitage family, but unfortunately, they look at this black guy surrounded by dead white people and do the wrong math and arrest him. And it's unfortunate, but it's a true slice of life of the racial profiling that does happen. But damn it, I'm so glad they didn't go with that ending. I am so glad. But in the theater, there was a moment where a lot of people were like, oh, no, don't tell me. Don't tell me you're going to go that route. And I like that it does allude you to think that it was going to be the ending of the racial profiling, only to find the best character ever in the world, Rod Williams, coming to save the day. Listen, when I grow up, I want to be Rod Williams. I want to be sassy and save the day. I still quote, because I'm TS motherfucking A, on a daily basis. That line is probably going to be written with the other movie lines on my grave. At this point, I'm just going to be having a giant plaque of just quotes I want to have with me. And I also love, too, that Rod Williams is so memorable that Little Ray Howery is still approached, saying thank you for representing TSA. Like, never in a million years would you ever think a TSA agent was going to be the savior of this story. And I love the fact that we got a humorous ending from a humorous guy that made a terrifying flick that could make you breathe at the end after not being able to breathe the whole time. But here's what I thought about. With the ending that I mentioned that was the original, it had me going back to one of our very first Black protagonist horror films that I talked about in my Dawn of the Dead episode called Night of the Living Dead, which famously had the first Black protagonist that was kicking ass. He was killing the zombies, and that was the first time that America was challenged to look at a Black man as a hero. But I can't act like that doesn't exist. This has been something talked about in our society, and the movies that come through about that, it can be the most uncomfortable experience to have to really face the facts hard in the mirror, whether it's a lady with a teacup hypnotizing people or a Black protagonist just trying to survive a night of horrific zombies. But at the heart of it, you have a protagonist that is just trying to survive. And it did make me wonder, did Jordan Peele take something from that original pioneer that served a Black protagonist, but then also showed the hard slice of life afterwards. I'm glad that Jordan Peele didn't go that route to have Chris Washington have a fate because of the color of his skin, and actually got to survive and get through. And we got the greatest line from Rod Williams. But that's what I thought about when I think of the ending, is Night of the Living Dead. This was a very far thing to have to explain, and I hope it made sense, and I hope I did it justice, but that's my thoughts on it. But then that film also did the route to still give that unfair slice of life when the protagonist is killed off. I hate to spoil 2 films for you in one thing, but here's the deal. You can look at that film and know why he got shot. Either thought he was a zombie, or just because he was Black. And the same deal with Get Out. Looking at this character, it kind of almost felt like a giant echo to that spot in history about the unfairness, about the parallel, the unfairness of it all. Now, I wouldn't say to quote me on that, because I don't know for certain if Night of the Living Dead really played into the ending of that, since he had his own ideas and own originality, since Chris Washington is an original hero. But knowing the original ending, that's where my mind went to see where this really began with Night of the Living Dead. But to see how it plays into our current state of cinema, that we don't have to have an unfair ending, even if it was an unfair movie. That we saw Chris go through hell and back. We want to see him make like the namesake and get the hell out of there. But I don't think we couldn't have this movie without the idea of what if it was going to be seen the way that it does happen to a lot of other Black people in real life, to just be thrown the book at just because you were born with Black skin. Chris Washington does feel like many other people that we've known that shouldn't be judged by the color of their skin. We've seen Chris be a good person all the way through, and be in a very unfortunate incident that he never asked for. That's what it's like at the end of the day. I hope all of that made sense, but that's my thoughts on it. So I'm going to end this episode with my favorite movie theater story about Get Out. And there was a dude sitting next to me, a very dapper looking gentleman. And right at the climax, when Chris is almost going to be fucking changed over and he stabs the guy in the ear, it spooked the dude, and he ended up hitting his movie tray with his knee, and this plate went flying, the silverware went flying, and I reached down to help, and as he's gathering the stuff, he leans over and he goes, "I'm so sorry." And I went, "I would have done the same thing." It is one of the loveliest moments I've ever had happen in a movie theater. But also, I never forget someone's reaction. Reactions are my favorite thing about being involved with films, is I love other people's experiences. And that's an experience that, like, I don't know if this guy ever thinks about it, but I think about this whenever I feel sad, is the dude from Get Out. I've shared the story on social media everywhere, and now I get to put it in my episode, and I feel like that's a great way to end it. This was a very short episode, and I hope I did it justice. I really hope that I did, because I found a lot of very interesting things about this movie, and it very much improved the love I have for it. But is it still going to be hard for me to go back and watch? Absolutely. I don't like the fact that that teacup will be waiting for me when I'm in there. It's just one of those films that it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but it does test you on if you want to dive into it, and so film's doing something right if it's got to make you think, do I really want to watch this or not? And the answer is, let me see how I feel about that teacup. So now is the time to find out what the third episode is going to be on the Halloween series. So I have some new additions in here to make things a little bit more... Oh, just a little bit more. I got nothing right now, guys. My brain is so fried and died. Anyway, so I'm going to mix these up right now. and I'm gonna find us our little episode. Alrighty, hang on. I think I got one. Okay, what are you? What are you? Show me your secrets. Well, here we go again. Third time, we have another animated show. I was getting worried we were running out of horror-themed shows, but this is going to be a fun little trip in time. For the third episode, the third episode of the Halloween series is going to be The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. That is just going to be beautiful. I'm looking forward to that one. Alrighty. Well, you all take care and stay amazing. Thank you for listening to another one of the episodes that I provide. It's a wonderful joy knowing that it's a wonderful joy to know that people are really appreciating the episodes. I have seen a recent spike in downloads for the show, and I got to see like which ones are getting popular and knowing like, wow, all my hard work is going into someone's library. It's a wonderful feeling to get. And so thank you all for supporting the show for so long. I appreciate y'all. So with that said, as always, if you want to catch up with me in between uploads or yap to me about movies, you can find me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen. And I wrote a little book called Inglorious Inc. and a prequel called The Company of Crime. And if you want to find those books, they are on Amazon. But guess what? I make life easier, and I have that available in the description box because I just like life to be easier. I want life to be easy to the point that you don't have to worry about someone like Chris Washington getting trapped and stuff like that. So that's the kind of easy I like. Anyway, you all take care now and stay amazing. This is your Screen Queen, signing off. Bye-bye!